even though Jacob and Esau were reconciled, they then parted and they went their separate ways. Esau went off to the land of Edom, became the ancestor of the Edomites. Jacob went into Canaan, became the ancestor of the Hebrews, 12 tribes of Israel. So Jacob and Esau then were supposed to, and then the Edomites, they were enemies for a long time. So did Jacob and Esau make the foundation of substance? Let's have a look. For Jacob and Esau to fulfill the indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature, Esau needed to love Jacob. Did Esau love Jacob?
Yes.
Yeah, they reconciled. Esau loved his younger brother. Did Esau need to respect him as his mediator to God? Did Esau respect Jacob?
Yes.
Yeah. You could see Jacob got a big family, all his wealth. Jacob was easy to respect. Did Esau obediently submit to Jacob's directions? No evidence of that. Did they multiply goodness by inheriting goodness from the bearer of God's blessing? Did they unite and multiply goodness together?
No.
No. So if they'd done what I suggested originally, which was a little hunting thing, digging a hole in the ground and going to hunting together, then they would have done that. Yeah? They would have made the foundation of substance. They didn't actually make the foundation of substance. The greatness of Jacob was that he overcame the fallen nature of Abel. Yeah? He was an arrogant little stuck-up, arrogant Abel with loads of fallen nature. He, as the one who overcame his fallen nature, recognized he made a mistake, upsetting his older brother, went and restored the relationship with his older brother, said sorry, etc., etc. Yeah? So that's the greatness of Jacob is that. Esau was just being Esau. Yeah. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, they didn't actually unite. It was too late by that stage for them to work together. Yes, too much water passed under the bridge. They could be reconciled, but they were too old to actually have a new start and to start working together, etc., etc. That was for the next generation. Okay, we'll have a look then. Jacob's family. As you know, he had two wives. Rachel, his favourite wife. Leah, his first wife, the older one. Leah had many children, and then Rachel ended up with two later on. Then also Jacob had two children from Zilpah, who was Leah's maid, and two sons from Bilhah, who was Rachel's maid. So let's have a look a little bit at what's going on here. So Jacob got married to Leah, then he wasn't happy, and he married Rachel later, and as it says in the Bible, he loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. Let's have a look. Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has looked on my affliction, my pain, from being so mistreated by my husband and not loved. Surely now my husband will love me, because I have brought him a son. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. She named him Simeon. You can see here Leah's heart, the incredible suffering that she went through. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore he was named Levi. Yeah, painful, isn't it? Rachel didn't have any children. And Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children. She envied her sister. And she said to Jacob, give me children, or I shall die. Jacob became very angry with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God, who's withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Then she said, here's my maid Bilhah. Go into her, that she may bear upon my knees, that I too may have children through her. A complicated relationship between Rachel and Leah. So how do you think, just think about what happened. How do you think Rachel felt about her father? Laban, Jacob would work for 7 years. Wedding day is coming. The day before, Rachel's thinking, wow, tomorrow after 7 years of waiting, I'm finally going to get married to Jacob. But then Laban decides to lock her up somewhere and then substitute her for Leah. How do you think Rachel felt?
Very angry.
Yeah, how do you think she felt towards her father?
Resentful.
Really angry. And then Leah marries Jacob, who's supposed to be her husband. How do you think Rachel now feels towards her older sister Leah, who's taken away? And then Leah gets married to Jacob, but Jacob loves Rachel. How do you think Leah feels? Do you think this is an easy situation to manage? A really complicated and a really difficult situation to manage, isn't it? Then Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. This is through her maid. Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I wrestle with my sister and I prevailed. So she named him Naphtali. You can see the intensity of the relationship here between Leah and Rachel. Incredible. Both of them married to the same man. They both want to be loved by their husband. The intensity of this relationship is unbearable. When Leah saw she'd ceased bearing children, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, good fortune. So she named him Gad. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the fields. The mandrakes were a plant which were like a drug, but they were kill pain, a bit like antidepressants, and brought them to his mother Leah. So his mother Leah needed antidepressants because of her. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small matter you've taken away my husband? Yeah. So Leah married Jacob, but then Jacob wanted to spend all his time with Rachel, so Leah felt Rachel had stolen her husband from her. Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Rachel said, then he may lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good dowry. So she has another son. And now my husband will honor me, because I have borne him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. And finally, God remembered Rachel, and God heeded her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son. And she said, God has taken away my reproach. And she named him Joseph. So the biblical tradition, polygamy always leads to problems. Yeah? The ideal is always one man or woman, right from page 1 in Genesis. And any time a man has more than one wife, it always leads to incredible problems. It happened, but it's not, Jacob had more than one wife, therefore, why shouldn't I? Actually, the lesson in the Bible is Jacob had more than one wife, and it was hell. What do you think it was like for Jacob living in this situation, 2 wives in this situation, a couple of concubines? You think it was an easy situation? Really difficult situation. Yeah, very difficult situation. Okay, so who do you think wrote this? Do you think these passages are written by a man or a woman? Probably a woman. Yeah. There's lots of hands in the Bible. I would say this is written by a female hand. Yes. You know what I mean? Because I don't think men could imagine. Okay, that's what's going on. This kind of conversation, this kind of dialogue here. It's all written down. It's interesting. Okay.
But all sons.
Sorry? She had one daughter.
Okay. But it seems like the 90% of the children are boys.
Well,
they had 12 sons and one daughter. So Leah had a daughter called Dinah. The last child she bore was a daughter called Dinah. Yeah, he had 12 sons. Do you think he had to have 12 sons? I don't know. Suppose, I don't think it's necessary for him to have 12 sons, it's just that's what happened. If you'd only had one, if you'd only married once and had Rachel and you had 2 sons, well, God's problems would have carried on based upon that. Or if you had 7 sons, it would have been, or 7 children, would have been based upon that. That's what happened. Just because it happened like that, doesn't mean, one has to think, oh, but I have 12 sons myself. So, that's not, the greatness of Jacob wasn't having 12 sons. The greatness of Jacob was making up with his older brother and setting that pattern of the peaceful, natural subjugation of Satan.
No, I was just wondering, being old boys, I wonder if they were counting the boys more than the girls, or what it is. I mean, it's unusual, right? It's just so many. Usually, basically, it's 50-50, right?
Well, some people have lots of just sons, some people just have just daughters. Anyway, that's what happened. There was one daughter, that's all I can say. Anyway, so Joseph then was his father's favourite. And as you know, he used to have these dreams. He would tell his brothers the dreams. I had a dream last night, the sun, the moon, the stars all bowed down in front of me. And the brothers said, slap, silly little boy, do you think Mum and Dad and us are all going to bow down before you? Who do you think you are, you stuck-up, snotty little boy? Then another day, he had another dream. I had a dream last night, he said at breakfast. We were all out cutting sheaves of hay, and all your sheaves of hay bowed down in front of my sheaf of hay. Slap, silly little boy. Who do you think you are that we're all going to bow down in front of you? You stuck-up, snotty little boy. Anyway, and then Dad, Jacob, gives him a coat of many colours. So you can imagine he's walking around in his coat of many colours and prancing around. He's always at home, and all the other boys are out having to work hard in the fields, looking after the flocks of sheep. And then his dad sends him out, to bring him some news. And so he goes and he finds all his brothers, and they're all at disco, and they're drunk, and they're not looking after the sheep, and a wolf has taken a couple of them away. And so he goes home and tells his dad how lazy his older brothers are. And so when the brothers come home and Dad says, how was it? And they say, oh, it was great, everything went really well. And he said, well, I heard that some wolves came along and you were out drinking and you've been so lazy. And they would have said, wretched little brother of ours, slap. And so that's the way it went. So was Joseph a good younger brother? Was he a good younger brother? No, he really wasn't. He was a really arrogant, stuck-up little boy. Anyway, so another time, his dad said, go and take your brothers a lunchbox and bring me some news. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and they could not speak peacefully to him. So every time they started speaking to him, all this emotion started coming up and they started getting really angry, yes? They couldn't have a peaceful conversation because of all this stuff that was inside them. And then one day they saw him from a long way off, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. So they hated Joseph, they were jealous of Joseph, wanted to kill him. And then Reuben, the oldest brother, who's a good older brother, said, no, let's not kill him, he is our brother, let's just throw him into a pit for the day, and he can stew in his juice, and then we'll send him home at the end of the day. So they took him, and they threw him into this large well, empty well, and there he was at the bottom of this well and couldn't do anything. Anyway, then Reuben goes off. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Then the Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites. And they took Joseph to Egypt. So when Joseph had been lifted out of this water well, out of this empty well, what do you think he was saying to his brothers as they pulled him up?
Thank you.
I'm telling Daddy.
Thank you for taking me out of it.
No.
I will tell Daddy.
Yeah?
I will tell Daddy.
Just wait till I get home and I tell Daddy that what you put me in this pit all day long and I didn't have any water to drink and there were mosquitoes and there were scorpions and I'm going to tell Dad about this and this and this and this and this. And they're so upset and so angry with them. And the next moment he finds he has been sold into slavery. And you probably thought, did I say something to upset my brothers? Why were they so upset they'd sell me into slavery? Did I say something wrong? You know what I mean? You must have started to think, why has this happened to me? Yes? Why has this happened to me? They started to think. Anyway, so as you know, he ended up, went to Egypt as a slave. He's bought by Potiphar. He was very conscientious, worked very hard, very honest. He got promoted, and then of course, he got to the top. And then this Potiphar's wife came along, tried to seduce him. He refused to give in to her temptation. He maintained his integrity. And then when Potiphar's wife, when he runs, I forgot to mention this, so she tried to seduce him, and then he refused to go along with that. And then she sent all the other servants away, and she was in bed pretending to be sick, and she rang the bell. Joseph was the only one there, so she said to Joseph, can you go to the kitchen and bring me a glass of water or something? And so he brought the water to the bedroom. She said, can you come and put it down on my bedside table next to me? So he goes over to put the water on the bedside table, and she makes a grab for him to try and drag him and pull him into bed. And then he resists, and he runs out of the room, which naked, because she's holding onto his tunic, cloak. And then she screams, rape, rape, rape. And then the police come round, he gets arrested, and then Potiphar comes home. He's really surprised to hear about this, and he interviews Joseph and said, tell me, Joseph, what really happened? And Joseph said, well, your wife's been bothering me all these months, and this is what happened. And Potiphar said, yeah, unfortunately it sounds like her. And so he believed Joseph. And he said, well, I'm not going to have you put to death, which is what would normally happen. I'll just have you thrown into prison, because I've got to preserve the honour and dignity of my wife. So he gets thrown into prison. So he's on this kind of roller coaster. He's the favourite son. He can't do anything wrong. He's got a coat of many colours, etc. And then he gets sold into slavery. Yes, he's bought as a slave, and he rises up in Potiphar's household to become in charge of everything, and then no fault of his own, again, he ends up into prison. Yes? And in prison, again, he maintains his integrity, his faith, his tradition, and he's very honest and good, and he gets promoted within the prison to manage the whole prison. And then a couple of prisoners have dreams. He interprets the dreams accurately, and then one prisoner gets put to death, executed, and the other prisoner is released. Okay, you know the stories. Anyway, then one day he's languishing in prison for years, and then the Pharaoh has a dream, and Pharaoh asks his wise men to interpret the dream. They can't interpret it, and then Pharaoh's cupbearer says, when I was in prison, there was a prisoner there called Joseph. He could interpret dreams accurately. So Pharaoh says, go and bring him. And so Joseph is brought in front of the Pharaoh, and he interprets the Pharaoh's dream accurately and says there are going to be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. And then the Pharaoh decides to appoint Joseph to become the Prime Minister of Egypt when he's 30 years old. The favourite son into slavery, running the household, into prison, and Prime Minister. Okay? How does that work? Has that ever happened? Did that ever happen?
Did it happen?
Has that happened? No, forget about Joseph. Has that happened in history? What?
Nelson Mandela was that.
Nelson Mandela. He walked out of prison and became the president of South Africa. Why could he do that?
Well, he was unfairly imprisoned.
Yeah, but he was put in prison unfairly, but, so...
He had an unchanging heart when he was in prison.
While he was in prison, he came out of... While he was in prison, he read a lot, he prayed a lot, he thought a lot, so that when he came out of prison, he was qualified to become president of South Africa. He didn't leave prison bitter, resentful, and, a shrunken person, but actually during his time in prison, he actually became a more magnanimous and a better person than before he went into prison. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not all automatic, it depends upon what you're doing when you're going through a suffering situation. So, from time to time this happens in people's lives. Sometimes you're going along in life, everything's going well, suddenly you lose your job, bonk. What happens? You have to maintain the situation, so you know what I mean? Life is like this, life is always like a roller coaster. Yeah, life is like this, always will be like that. The point is, how can one maintain some kind of even spiritual life, even when everything's going up and down? Margot?
Does that have something to do with your father ending up in prison several times
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah.
To mature?
My father also, he went to prison. He saw when he went to Danbury, he behaved and lived in Danbury just as if he was living in Eastgard. That kind of stability was just amazing.
Does it work in reverse as well? Like Lenin, Lenin came from Siberia, returned to St. Petersburg to run Russia and Soviet Union. It's kind of can also work in a negative way as well.
It just depends whether that experience. Honestly speaking, Lenin in exile in Siberia, it was a piece of cake compared to being in prison. The Tsar, it wasn't that tough. Anyway, he didn't go there from Siberia, he went there from Switzerland. Okay, what happens next? Okay, so he becomes the Prime Minister of Egypt. In 7 years he collects all the grain, stores the grain. 7 years later there's a famine. There's a famine set after 7 years, and the famine expands to Canaan, and Jacob and his brothers, the rest of the family, run out of food. Jacob hears there's food down in Egypt, so he sends his sons off to get some food. And he keeps Benjamin, who's Rachel's second son, at home. Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin's kept at home. So 10 brothers go to Egypt to buy grain, and then Joseph sees them. He hasn't seen them for years. 10, 15 years he hasn't seen them. How do you think he feels when he sees them?
Vengeful. Vengeful, I would say.
Okay.
Angry, still, or angry.
Interesting. Probably all kinds of mixed emotions. Something he hadn't been thinking, probably hasn't thought about before all these years. He's so busy running the country. Then suddenly, all his childhood appears in front of him. All the memories come back. He remembers, I wonder if Dad's alive. I remember this. All these memories came back, and all kinds of mixed feelings along with it about his brothers. On one hand, he probably is so, wow, they're my brothers. I haven't seen them for years. But they're the ones that saw me. You know what I'm saying? All kinds of stuff went on. So he called them over and interviewed them. They obviously didn't recognize him, and he spoke through an interpreter. And he asked them, tell me, who are you, where have you come from? Are your parents still alive? This, and this. He wanted news from home. But then he also, didn't know what to do with this situation. Had to think about it. And then he said, okay, I think you're all a bunch of spies, and he had them all thrown into prison for 3 days. Okay, so that was gave him time to think about it. What am I going to do? How? He had this feeling, I have to, these are my brothers. Somehow I got to restore my relationship with them. I can't just do it like this. I have to do something. He had to work out some kind of plan. So he threw it all into prison. And then after 3 days he let them out. And he said to them, okay, next time you come to Egypt, to prove to me that you're telling the truth, you have to bring Benjamin, your youngest brother, with you. And just to make sure you do, I'm going to keep Simeon, who I think was the second brother, behind. Reuben was the one who didn't want him to be killed. It's quite probable that Simeon may be the one who hated him the most and was the one who wanted him killed. Yeah? I don't know. Maybe that's why Simeon was one kept behind in prison. And bring your youngest brother next time. So next time then, they run out of food. And Jacob says, go down to Egypt, and the brothers say, we can only go to Egypt to take Benjamin with us. Jacob says, I'm not going to lose Benjamin as well. Anyway, eventually there is no food. So Judah says, look, Dad, I promise that I will guarantee that I will bring Benjamin back. I guarantee and I promise it. If anything goes wrong, I'll take responsibility for it. So he made himself a surety for Benjamin, a guarantor. So they arrive down in Egypt, and they knock on Joseph's door, and he invites them for dinner, and he sets them all out in the table, and he's sitting on a special place, and he seats the brothers all according to their age, and he gives Benjamin twice as, doesn't give all his brothers so much food, he gives Benjamin twice as much food as all his brothers. What's he doing here? He's setting them up. It's very interesting. So they have dinner, and he listens to their conversation. And earlier on, that's right, I forgot to say that when they were found out and Simeon was put in prison, when they were having a conversation amongst themselves in Hebrew, which Joseph could understand, the brothers were saying to themselves, "Why has this happened? Why has the Prime Minister treated us like this? We're not criminals. We haven't done anything wrong." And then another one said, "Oh, perhaps this is a karma. Perhaps now we're getting punished for the way we treated our brother Joseph. Perhaps that's why this disaster is happening to us." And Joseph, of course, could hear their conversation and could see that that what was happening to them was making them think about this crime they committed before, selling their brother into slavery. And he could see that something was going on inside them, some sense of regret, etc., etc. Anyway, so they have dinner with Joseph, and again he is able to understand their conversation. And then at the end he says to them, "Right, you can all go home tomorrow." And then Joseph arranges for his silver cup that he was given by the Pharaoh to be put into Benjamin's sack. And then the next morning the brothers set off, and then Joseph wakes up and says, "Someone has stolen my silver cup. It must be those wretched Canaanites, those Hebrews. Go and bring them back." So the police go along and they track down the brothers, they stop them, they empty all the sacks of grain onto the ground, and they find in Benjamin's sack the silver cup. And so they're all brought back in front of Joseph. And then the conversation is really interesting. Then Judah says, this is the fourth brother, the brother, if you remember, who sold Jacob, whose idea it was to sell Jacob, whose idea it was to sell Joseph into slavery. Then Judah said, "What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants." He's referring here to the guilt of what we did to our brother. So Joseph realizes what's going on here. "God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also in whose hand the cup has been found." In other words, we're all guilty. You can put us all into prison. But Joseph said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant," or my slave, basically. "But as for you, go up in peace to your father." So what can the brothers do now? What could they do? Along every single step here, there are moral choices that have to be made. What is the choice that the brothers have here?
Go back.
Yeah, they could say, "Bye-bye, Benjamin, you've been a really naughty boy, enjoy the rest of your life in prison, we're going home to see Mum and Dad." Yes? And then what would have happened? What would Joseph have done if the brothers had said that?
Punished them.
Yeah, he would have realized there are the same selfish brothers who'll sell their brother for anything. And he would have had them arrested and given a good beating, and they would have deserved it, yeah? That makes sense? But what happened next is remarkable. Judah then speaks up. "Now therefore, as soon as I come to my father, and Benjamin is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. For I became a pledge of safety for Benjamin to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all of my life. Now therefore, please let me remain instead of the boy, as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers." But how could I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Bye. So what's going on here? When Cain killed Abel, then God appeared to Cain and said to Cain, "Where is your brother?" And what did Cain say?
I'm my brother's keeper.
Am I my brother's keeper? Okay, in other words, I'm not responsible for my mother's death. So in this situation, Judah, who's the older brother, what is his response to that question? Where's your brother? Yes, I am my brother's keeper. And Judah then was willing to exchange his life for the life of his brother. Yes? This is real. So Judah started off where? Selling Joseph into slavery. Did Judah have a load of fallen nature? Yes. And now Judah has moved to the space where he's now willing to exchange his life for the life of his younger brother. It's a huge distance he's moved, hasn't it? Judah really overcame his fallen nature. Yeah, this is Cain, Abel thing. Yeah. Judah's one of the most remarkable people in the Bible, willing to do that. And then what happens? Then Joseph said to his brothers, at this point Joseph is so overwhelmed and moved, he sends all the servants and men and people out. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. You can imagine, my God. This brother, younger brother who we sold into slavery, he's the prime minister of Egypt. He holds the power of life and death over us. Yes? They were dismayed. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. So it's not you who sent me here, but God. He's made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt." So what's Joseph done here? He's done more than forgiven them. He's actually said it was God was working through you to do this. He didn't blame them, he didn't accuse them, he didn't ask them to apologize. Actually, he reconceptualized his own story, that actually what happened was actually God's will. Yes? So he retold the story of his own life and interpreted it differently. Our story is very important to go back and re-examine, retell our story. So, anybody else ever done that? Jacob? Okay, so you can imagine, how do we know about Jacob the way, we know the Jacob and Esau story because it's written in the Bible. Why is it written in the Bible? Because Jacob told his sons, "I got a brother Esau, and I did this, and I did that, and this, that, and the other, and I went back after 21 years, and they remembered the reconciliation and everything." Alright? So you can imagine Joseph, when he saw his older brothers, he thought, this is a bit like Dad and Uncle Esau. Yeah? I need to try and work out a way to be reconciled with my older brothers. So what he did is he set up his older brothers. Yes? He did a sort of role play. He gave his older brothers a second chance, a chance to prove that they were... He gave them a second chance, a chance to prove that they were no longer... So... Okay, we'll just bit. That's all right. Anyway, he gave them a second chance, a chance to prove that they were no longer the same selfish older brothers that they were before. Yes? It was an act of incredible generosity. Yeah? If Joseph had just appeared in front of his older brothers, they would have felt really shocked. But because he gave them the chance to be in a similar situation that they were in before, instead of selling Joseph into slavery, now they are put in a situation where they could have Benjamin sold into slavery, where they're going to do the same thing to Benjamin that they did to him. Yes? So he was putting them in a similar situation to restore the mistake that they'd made before. That make sense? There are incredible intelligence here. Incredible intelligence to think, how can I give my older brothers the opportunity to show that they've changed so they can stand before me with dignity? Yes? That they can stand before me, showing to me, having proved to me that they're no longer the same older brothers that they were, proving to me that they've apologized and repented by doing things differently. That's what repentance means. You find you regret what you did wrong, you find yourself in a similar situation, you don't make the same mistake, you do it differently.
Restoration.
That's what restoration is. And so Joseph then gave his brothers the chance to restore the mistake they'd made, to put it right so that when he met them, he could meet them and they could help them to recover and restore their dignity in that sense.
They earned their dignity.
Yes, he gave them the chance to do that. He set them up in this kind of role play. You know what I'm saying? He set them up. So he took him some time to think about it. What should I do? You know, he didn't act impulsively. Just throw him to prison for 3 days. So we can have a bit of time to meditate, to think it through. What am I going to do? You know. Anyway, so here he said it's not. So he didn't want to say, "Oh, I forgive you for selling me into slavery." He changed the whole story. He retold the story. It was God's plan. It was God's will that I should be sold into slavery so that the whole nation of Egypt wouldn't die of starvation and our family wouldn't die of starvation either. It was all God's plan in that sense. Who else has said that? Who else said it? Use this principle.
Jesus.
Father.
Jesus. How did Jesus use this principle?
Sent to die. Being sent to die.
Yes, after, we know the crucifixion was a mistake, it should never have happened, but there was a resurrection. After the resurrection, Jesus didn't go around blaming his disciples. Actually, the reason why Christians believe that the crucifixion is the will of God is because Jesus told them. If you read the resurrection stories, the story on the road to Emmaus, where there's 2 disciples who are really depressed walking along, and Jesus appears and they don't recognize him, and Jesus explains to him from all the prophecies in the Old Testament that actually the crucifixion was God's will, so there could be the resurrection and forgiveness of sins. Yeah? And then they realize, oh, that was Jesus talking to us. So the reason why Christians believe the crucifixion of Jesus was the will of God, because that's what Jesus told them. Just as Joseph said to his brothers, actually it was God's will. Yes? Extraordinary, isn't it? So Jesus didn't go around blaming his disciples, oh, you failed because you rejected me. And I remember when Father went to Danbury prison, with a long court battle to try to make sure Father didn't go to prison. But the day before Father went into Danbury prison, I remember Father said, it's God's will that I should go to prison. And because I'm going to go to prison in Danbury, all these amazing things are going to happen, and many Christian churches are going to come and support us, and this, and this, and this. And it happened. Yeah? So Father embraced what happened as God's will, and proclaimed and preached it. This was what God wanted to happen. It was God's plan to do this. Does that make sense? Yeah. That was Joseph who established this principle that Jesus practiced and Father practiced. Yes? Joseph, again, one of the most remarkable people. So you think about the psychological insight that Joseph had about how to bring reconciliation. It's extraordinary. Yes? This is one of the most extraordinary stories in the whole of literature. This is the first time in world literature that this happens, this sense of reconciliation, repentance, forgiveness, and this incredible deep heart to want to do that with someone who has offended one. Yeah. These are incredible stories, well worth reading. These are just abbreviation bits. Okay.
So it wasn't the original will of God. It became the will of God.
Well, the point is, nobody knows. The point is, he interpreted his life as that.
Right.
Of course, if Joseph had been a good younger brother, then he could have, he wouldn't have got sold into slavery in the first place, and there would have been a plan A. Yeah. So plan A was Joseph should have been a good younger brother, won the respect of his older brothers, and united, etc., just as it was with Jacob. Yeah. Should have been with Jacob, but that plan A didn't happen. So he was, Joseph was a stuck-up little boy. He was so arrogant and boastful. How to solve this problem? Sell him into slavery. So in that sense, God sold Joseph into slavery so he could realize what an arrogant, stuck-up person he was, and he could start to self-reflect and think, oh, okay, did I say something wrong? Did I offend my brother in some way? Why did they accept? Just as Jacob, by being tricked by Laban, also started to reflect upon his own nature and realize, actually, I am the one who's wrong. It's my mistake, yes? I need to change, I need to make it up. So, of course, if Jacob and Joseph both started off as good younger brothers, then they wouldn't have ended up doing that. But because they weren't, they went through this course to help them to overcome their fallen nature, yeah? And then that could happen. And so, in that sense, Joseph realized, actually, it was necessary for me to go through this course in order for me to have my fallen nature, in order for me to work off and overcome my fallen nature, yes? All these sort of, that make sense? Sometimes it happens to people, some of these people, all kinds of rough edges, they go through certain experiences and the rough edges get knocked off and they come a little bit nicer. Okay, so in that sense he would say, yes, this was God's will. It was necessary for me to go through this in order to become a better person, in order to do it. Okay? But again, you know, of course, if his brothers hadn't done that, if his brothers hadn't responded to Benjamin's situation that way and they just went home, then of course he would have given them a good thrashing, a good beating, and they would have deserved it. So, you know, and they were reconciled, and it's a very beautiful story. One more example, successful example, Jonathan and David. So, how did David inherit the throne? So he's Saul, the Israelite, the Israelites, they wanted to have a king like everybody else, and so God told Samuel to anoint Saul. Saul became the king of Israel. Saul had a son called Jonathan, who was a very good son, who loved his father very much. And but for various reasons, Saul made some mistakes, and God wanted to replace him by David. And so God told Samuel to go and anoint David. So David then becomes anointed to become the next king of Israel. So normally, when Saul dies, who would become the next king of Israel?
The son?
Jonathan. But David's been anointed and appointed by God through Samuel to become the next king of Israel. How does that work? Can David say, go knock on the palace door, knock knock, I've been anointed and appointed by God through Samuel to become the next king of Israel, please retire. Does that work?
No.
What would happen to him? Be killed. And he would deserve to be put to death, or at least thrown into prison.
Well, not deserve.
Anyway.
Those days, that's what they did.
That's what they did, because they felt that's what such an upstart would deserve, you know, to just arrive to the palace door saying, step aside. What impudence. Okay, so how did David become the king? Jonathan's Cain, the older brother, got the birthright. David's Abel, hasn't got the birthright, which is the right to become the next king of Israel. How do you do it? Okay, so David then, he's the youngest of, I don't know, a dozen sons or something. And his older brothers are all soldiers, all fighting against the Philistines. And David's at home looking after the sheep and, you know, doing that sort of stuff. Anyway, his father Jesse, or their father Jesse, says to David one day, you know, I really wonder, how's the war going on? Please go to the front line and bring me some news about how the war's getting on, how your brothers are doing, and how brave I'm sure they are. So here's some lunch boxes. You go off to the front line and tell them. So David carries his, you know, lunch boxes off to his brother, and they're all on the top of a valley, on a hill. And in the valley, David sees there's a huge giant called Goliath. And Goliath is a very uncouth person, and he's challenging the Israelites, and he's mocking and making fun of the God of Israel, and saying to the Israelites, why doesn't one of you come and fight me one-on-one, and that's the way we can determine the outcome of the battle without thousands of people getting killed. And David, he looks down at this giant, and he's thinking, what an unpleasant, bad-mannered person using such bad language. So he says to his brothers, why don't one of you go and kill him? And they say, slap, silly little boy. What do you know about fighting and soldiers, and war and armor? Anyway, so David says, somebody's got to go and teach this person a lesson. Can't let him stand there mocking us and making fun of God. And so David said, I'm going to go and do it. No. Anyway, so he goes down into the valley, he crosses the stream and he picks up some pebbles and he has a sling and he approaches Goliath, who's really shocked at the little boy coming to challenge him, and he takes his sling and the stone, he whizzes it around his head and pow! The stone goes and hits Goliath in his forehead and kills him. Yeah? It's like next level of technological stuff. And Goliath falls over and he is killed. And David goes along, takes his sword, cuts off his head, and goes and presents it to King Saul. So this is David then kills Goliath. And what's interesting next is that when Jonathan sees this, then Jonathan feels David is amazing. He is, John has like this epiphany or revelation. David is much braver than me, he's much wiser than me. He would be much more qualified to become the next king of Israel than me. So David then, through this, he wins the love and respect of Jonathan. And then Jonathan offers David the birthright. He offers him his position. So Jonathan made a covenant with David, an agreement, because he loved him as his own soul. He really loved David as his younger brother. And Jonathan gave his robe and armor and sword and bow to David. So Jonathan gave to David all the things that represented the fact that he was the heir to the throne. His special robe, which only the heir to the throne could wear, his bow, his belt, all these things that represented the fact that he was to be the next king of Israel. He gave all these to David. Yeah? And then David was very good. He was adopted by Saul, but Saul tried to kill him a few times. Won't go into that. And David then, anyway, so Saul then, he wanted to kill Jonathan. Saul wanted to kill David, but Jonathan, and he told Jonathan to go and get David killed, but Jonathan refused to do that. So his feeling, he loved his father, but he wouldn't do something he knew was wrong. He wouldn't go against his conscience. He wouldn't kill his friend or anything like that. So Jonathan, Saul's son, visited David at Horesh, encouraged him in God. He said, "Don't despair, my father Saul cannot lay a hand on you. You will be Israel's king, and I'll be right at your side to help. And my father knows it." Yeah? So here you have this sort of ideal example of how things should go. A good younger brother, acting out his original nature, wins the heart of Cain, the older brother, who gives him the birthright, and they unite together, and the older wants to protect and support the younger. That makes sense? This is again a remarkable story. So this is based upon all the things that went before, the gradual change of the lineage, gradual overcoming of fallen nature within the people of Israel, such that this kind of thing was possible to happen. Yeah? Not like the Shakespearean Macbeth, you go and assassinate people, but a natural transfer of authority in this kind of way. So that's the end of all that. Just one more thing I want to mention. Next, if you've got any questions. Got 5 minutes, so anyway, I've really enjoyed coming here. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. There's a particular project I'm working on, for which I'm looking for some support and help. Okay, I'm trying to. I was in Russia for 7 years, and I was involved in this project of creating a book called Moy Miriya, My World and I. This is it here. It was written for spiritual moral education of young people in Russia and the former Soviet Union, and it was based upon a multi-faith approach to spiritual moral development and character development. Includes universal values and virtues, and promoting people's self-development and sense of responsibility, also supporting marriage and the family. So anyway, certain things happened in my life such that I got involved in this project again. I went to Israel and Palestine a couple of years ago, and I met somebody there, and I gave him this book in English, and he wanted to translate it and publish it in Arabic. Because he said, this is exactly the book which you need in Palestine, because people there young people are going crazy, sort of religious fanaticism. He said, it's exactly the book we need in Palestine, And then a couple of months later, he scribed and said, this is exactly the book we need throughout the Middle East. And so he wants to translate it into Arabic and edit it so it's a book that can be published in a Muslim world. It's based upon the principle, but there's lots of other things as well. And this person's called Ghassan Abdullah. He runs, he's a couple of years older than me. There's all kinds of interesting things about our relationship. Anyway, so looking for $15,000 to translate and edit and publish 4,000 books, to translate them to Arabic, to edit them, to produce an edition that can be used throughout the Muslim world, and to publish 4,000 books as a sort of starting project to be used in schools in Palestine, and hopefully then to interest people in other Muslim countries to use the same thing. So if you're interested and you want to say thank you to me, then please, you can donate. We've got 11% of the amount of money so far. This is the website, justgiving.co, My Journey in Life. And you could just click there and you can have transfers from PayPal or banks or whatever else. Okay. So just looking for some support for this little project. And that's my little contribution to try to make the world a better place, a more peaceful place. Anyway, so as I said, thank you all very much for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. And Lawrence has a question.
Yeah, so as follow-up question, this project, because I know we're